everyone, it's Jennifer, and thank you for joining me today. Yes, I took apart a bracelet. I had made a bracelet using this beads from the Midnight Green Classics, and when I started looking at this, I thought, well, I must have taken this one apart too at some point because I feel like either I'm missing something or something was out of place. So these beads here, which I can always check too, but these beads here might have been on it. I'm not sure. So I will check and then put a yes or a no in the section of the video when you watch it again. So I took it apart and I'm going to remake my original bracelet, even though it does resemble somebody else's bracelet. Now, honestly, I cannot remember who it was. So it's been a while and maybe a week or so, and I can't remember whose it was, but we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you now what I did originally and what I'm doing, what I did originally with this piece. And then you already saw what I did making this my second. So this is a bracelet. This is bracelet 3.0. And the reason why I'm going ahead and making this again is because I did hear back from the viewer that I originally made this for. And she said, I have a 5.5 wrist, a 5.5 inch wrist. And that was one of the issues that I had when I first originally made it, was that it was small. So this here is going to give me about 4 3/4 of an inch, because I'm going to do some spacing. I did have the little cube beads at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and just take them off. And we're going to be using some 18 gauge soft flex CraftWire in silver, and we're also going to be using some 20 gauge for the wrapping. So here's what I did before. Okay, so this is what I had done before. I was showing you the midnight green bead strand, also that I'm using some 20 gauge and 18 gauge soft flex CraftWire. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and string on all my beads, and I'm cutting this off in between so that you're not watching the whole entire thing all over again. I'm using the second size of the bell making step pliers to make a loop on one end, and then I'm going to go ahead and break the neck so that it looks more like an eye pin. I grabbed probably about 18 inches of 20 gauge CraftWire, and then I just started wrapping it on one side, and then just started spacing out my beads, and was kind of warming the wire in between and trying to make a loop. And what I was going for were wide loops to kind of give it this spacey intergalactic type look. And I thought that I got there with this, and it's really pretty on. And I wasn't too happy with the spacing on this original bracelet, so I'm glad that I redid it, and was just messing around with all of the spacing here and trying to get the loops right. Now the loops, it's not important to get the loops perfect at this time, because you can go back in and start messing with them a little bit after you're all done. And here I'm just holding the wire and the beads, as far as like the loop and the beads, until I get down to the end and go ahead and start cleaning things up in between, bringing those wires tight. And as you can see, I didn't have a whole lot left over, but I'm going to trim the end and then go ahead and make my, I'm going to break the neck first, then go in and wire cut off the tail to where I had enough for that second step of the stepper bell making pliers. And here we are. Now I'm just forming it to get it to go on my wrist, and voila, there we are. So I'm going to do something a little similar than what I did before, with adding all of my beads onto the beading wire, or the CraftWire, before I start trimming the wire because I want to make sure that I have it long enough, or that I have enough, that it's long enough, that I have enough beads on there. So let's go ahead and get these all threaded on here. And I sectioned these so that I can have some large loops. And what I mean by loops, well, you saw, now that you saw what I was doing, but I like to have that large look. And I really like how it looked with those large loops. And I didn't do this in any specific design except for making sure that my spacers, different from the one I did before, I put my spacers in the middle. So, so I do want to try that. Since I already tried the other one and I know what it's going to look like, I want to give this one a try. And if I don't like it, I can just take it apart again, right? Okay, so I'm not going to use this bead. I had these beads on my magical wand, and I needed a magical wand so I can tell what I was doing. So these are amazing. These are from Misty Moon Designs. Okay, so now the first thing that I did, and that I'm going to do, these are some leftover beads. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to give myself a good flush cut. There we go. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give myself a loop. And I believe in the first one I used small bail making pliers, but I'm going to go ahead and use this right here. This makes a nice large loop, which might actually be the smaller of the small bail making pliers. I just don't have them at arm's reach right now. And I'm just going to take it to about there. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of a bend so that I have this looking like an eye pin, just like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring this down. And what I did was I just sort of formed it so that I can see how long I needed this to be. And I am going to bring out my little fandy dandy guy, right? And I'm going to bring this out, and I want about 5.5 inches, but I also want to be able to add some wraps all in between. So this will give me a little bit. Let me see here. I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that, 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 and I'm going to have that, and that would be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and give it the trim here. And if I need to trim it off more, I will. But let's go ahead and get this wrapped now. I give it a nice good flush cut. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side. Okay, so we have that, and then we're going to go ahead and break it off. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring that out. And so what I want to do is cut off some wire, and this is the 20 gauge in the bright silver. And I believe I did 15 inches or 20 inches the last time, and I thought that that was a little bit overkill. And it actually wasn't. I ended up with just the right amount. I had a little bit of waste. But not enough to write home about. All right, so let's go ahead and get this trimmed off. Okay, so now the first thing that I want to do is I want to take my wire and just put it up against this way here. And now this is 20 gauge. It is soft, or dead soft CraftWire. So it is still a little easy to work with, but not completely easy. it's not like working with, you know, your 24 or 22 gauge or 26 gauge wire. So I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers here to help things out. And I'm going to go like 4 wraps, because then we have this one here too. And what I can do here is I can just bring that in. So open things up and bring that in. Okay. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so then I don't have to stab myself 1,000 times. I'm going to go ahead and give it a trim. And then I'm going to make sure that the tip is not sticking out. I might have to do that. I'll tuck it in after we're all done. Okay, so now I have this. So now what I want to do is I want some, I don't want it to go right up against the bead. I believe I showed this before in the little quick part, but I have this here and it went up against each bead. And what I want to do in this one is I want it to flare out a little bit. And so again, you do have a 20 gauge wire, so it is a little it's a little more stiff than your 22 gauge, which I think I used 20 gauge in the other one, in that other bracelet too. But now what I'm doing is I'm holding this and I'm holding it up against the beads so that I can try and get nice, clean wraps. And if I don't, I can just bring them together. And I'm going to go around 4 times. And again, I can just bring those together. So now we have those a little closer together. Now this one is going to be the only bead that's by itself. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do it on the other side. If you have to, you can bring in your nylon jaw pliers, because you are messing around with this wire quite a bit. Okay, so now I'm holding all of this in place and I'm just going to flare out a bit. And if you don't like working with such a large piece of wire, you can always trim off, because it's easy to add in between. And then I'm going to go ahead and just force that down with my thumb while I'm holding this. And I can go back and change things around after I'm all done. And that's the joy of having the large loops too, is that I can get my finger in there. Okay, and I'm just going to go around the 4th time. So there we go. So then we're just going to continue this journey around all of these sections here. So here we go, and you can push them together. And I'm just going to keep on going. And since I used the nylon jaw pliers, it already kind of formed, but I want it to stick out just a little bit more. Okay, so then I'm going to hold the beads and hold that wire loop and start wrapping and try and push that up against. And that's how I get my wire out of sorts. And go again. Now this is not a design that I did on my own. This is a design from Jem Hawks. She did I believe it was a necklace, and she said, oh, you can do a bracelet with this. Well, that's what I did. And that's how I got the other one with the Sunset Goddess collection. Let's go ahead and get that pushed down. And we're going to take this little section here. So we have this section. So isn't that cute? It's kind of I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know, spacey, earthy, or spacey. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get this formed out. And again, you can always come back in after. That's what I did with the other one too before I took it apart. Came in after for the pictures. Okay, and we're gonna have this, make sure you're pushing up against there, and there's a nice size loop. And I'm gonna hold on to that loop as well as the beads and get this all wrapped. Okay, so we're gonna go 1, 2, I guess that's 3. No. And yeah, that was 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and bring this in a little bit and go. Then we're gonna come this way. And we're going to do the same thing here. And we're going to go ahead and wrap 1. And then we're going to go 2. And then we're going to go 3. And then we're going to go 4. And it looks like we're going to have a little bit of room at the end. So that's okay, because we can always just trim off that loop. And let's go like this. And again, we're going to hold on to this wire, hold on to my beads, which means I'm holding on to the base too, because I'm pushing it with my thumb on this side. So we're 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you can do too is you can leave, you can actually leave that if you want to add some dangles or anything, but I'm going to go ahead and get that trimmed off. That is a nice extra amount because I can still use it for something else. And let's give it a bit of a trim. So I think I did 20 inches, so the 18 inches would have been perfect. Okay, so let's get in and get that nubby. And then we're going to trim off this end here too. So that is perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and trim about, because this is how much I want to trim off, right? I want to trim off the amount from here to here. So I'm going to go about halfway with the flush cut on this side. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and come in, and I'm going to go ahead and just get this bent. And bring in the 6-stepper here and get that all tucked in. This can be what I'm attaching it to. And I happen to have one here. Okay, so let's grab a, I don't want to put it directly on the necklace. So let's grab this size here. And let's get this opened up. And then we'll get things oriented correctly. I'll go ahead and do this. And do that, and then we'll get it closed off. I want to hear it lock. There it goes. Okay, so now that I have it like this, I need to have this here. I need to have it turn. And I'm going to turn it like that, so that when I go to put on my clasp, I have that there. And this is super tiny, super, super tiny. But for someone with a small wrist, This is absolutely perfect. So I'm going to undo this and just lay it on my wrist. And isn't that just gorgeous? I love that. And I'll go back in and re-round off some of the areas. But isn't that just beautiful? And this turned out stunning. It does have a little spacey look to it with the wires going way out. But I love it. I love it. It's so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and get this rounded off a little bit better, get some pictures, and get the video posted. So be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up if you like it, and comment. I'd love to see what everybody has to say, and subscribe. And until next time, have a good one.